Hello, Education 406. Thank you for jumping right into week one. I apologize that the video was probably not the best quality since I had lost my voice. So still not back to 100%, but so I waited as long as I could, but wanted to make sure that I jumped on here and let you guys know what's in store for this week and kind of give you a little bit of feedback for last week. So one thing really quick before we jump into week two content. Just a reminder that you need to be sharing your interactive notebooks with me. And so I have 3 interactive notebooks that I've not received yet. So that is part of your week one responsibilities. And so I know week one, we kind of need to get acclimated to what's going on, what the course expectations are, but please make sure that you're sending your work each week. So moving forward, your work is due Sundays at 11:59, and anything after that is going to be late or counted points off for being late. So please make sure that we are putting all of our information turned in or emailed or submitted through Blackboard. However, it is being asked that you submit it. Please make sure that that is on time. Discussion boards were great. Thank you for your input and your feedback and your conversation. I'm really looking for that kind of response. A lot of you, most of you, when you replied to your colleague's post, you were very intentional about it. It wasn't just kind of a general comment. There was good feedback, good input, good conversation. So I appreciate that. I'm looking for more than just a 1-line or 2-line, I agree with this, or I think the same thing kind of response. So be intentional about that. And we'll talk a little bit about what expectations are for discussion boards moving forward once they're now going to be getting into the content. So let's take a look at our syllabus. So again, if you navigate over here to our syllabus, you click on that link, it will take you into our syllabus for this course. Moving down to this week's learning outcomes. So we are going to be talking about picture books and how we can use those even at upper elementary levels for reading comprehension work. Talking about gradual release of responsibility and what that means and how we use that in the classroom and how that best practice really does help our students with comprehension. We will be talking about technology, ways to assess comprehension, strategies for students to pick good fit books, and we'll talk about that in just a minute when we look at your interactive notebook. And reflecting on your field experience or your experience in classrooms and applying that to reading comprehension. So you'll see over here your tasks for this week, your discussion board, your interactive notebook. Anchor charts are going to be a part of your interactive notebook, so that'll be built into there, as well as your strategies that work chapters 4 and 5. So you need to read chapters 4 and 5, and then in your interactive notebook there will be some tasks that you'll need to complete around the content of those chapters. So looking back, if we go into our weekly content, our week 2 folder, you have a couple of things here. So this video will be uploaded into this folder also, but you also have our discussion board prompt and link to that forum, as well as an anchor chart video. So let's start here with this discussion board because that's one of the first things on your to-do list. So remember that in the syllabus, it talked about the expectation of being intentional and meaningful in your posts and in your feedback, in your replies. So this will be at the top of every discussion board post from here on out, just as a reminder. So you are going to post your reply to whatever the prompt is, and we'll talk about this week's in just a second. And then you need to reply to 2 colleagues as well. In order for you to receive full credit in your post, you need to be citing evidence from your text. So it's not going to be just enough to kind of generally talk about it. I want you to use the evidence from the text. If you have other articles that you've read or other pieces you want to pull in and you want to cite those, that's wonderful. But at a minimum, you need to be citing evidence from the text in your discussion board post. So you need to be referencing, put according to and page numbers, and use APA in-text citations when you're doing this. If you don't have the citations there, the in-text citations, then you will not receive the full credit for the discussion board post. Now, let's look at what your post is and what your forum is this week. So chapter 5, once you read chapter 4 and 5, you're going to jump in here to your discussion board. And it talks about building a literate community in a classroom. So I want you to think about classrooms that you're in. So if you are in a classroom placement right now, if you're a TA in a classroom, if you're in a field experience, if you're not, think about an experience of your own when you were a student in a classroom. I want you to look at chapter 5, the 9 principles to setting a strong tone for a literate classroom community. And I want you to just kind of see what speaks to you out of those 9 principles. Choose 3 that I want you to speak to and write about in your forum. And I want you to provide evidence from the text on how that evidence is or is not happening in your experience. So of the 9, you're picking 3, and you're telling me these were or these were not a part of my experience. And again, your experience can be your current experience in a classroom, if you're a TA, or if you're in a field experience, or if you're not in the field right now, it can be your own experience from a classroom when you were the student. But of those 9 principles, really tell me, yes, this was happening. No, this one's not happening. Yes, this one kind of was happening. But you're citing evidence from the text to support if that was or was not happening. So yes, it is. And the authors share this information about this principle, which is what I saw in my classroom. So you're wanting to make that connection to the text. Moving forward, there will be some weeks when I ask you to create an anchor chart in your interactive notebook. And so there's 2 different ways for you to do that. And we'll dive into your interactive notebook here in just a second. But before you do that, I want you to watch this anchor chart video. It just kind of explains what it is. If you've never heard of an anchor chart, it explains what it is, kind of gives a little an introduction and sample or model for you to look at. So please make sure that you watch that before you create your own. Okay, so the other piece, you will have your interactive notebook, and you should have that saved in your Google Drive. If you do not have it created and saved in your Google Drive yet, you'll need to go back into week 1 to access it. Make a copy of it and then share it with me. But when you go into your interactive notebook, this is the template copy, so it doesn't have any information in there yet other than your prompts. So you are going to go down to week 2. And between chapters 4 and 5, these are the things I want you to speak to. Reading in a 21st century classroom. So define in your own words the 6 principles to enrich comprehension with technology. So especially now with students so able to access technology and online resources, there are definitely ways that we can use it to our advantage when we are teaching reading comprehension. So of their 6 principles, how can you use technology for reading comprehension, and how can you use it to differentiate instruction? So how can you use it differently for students that are on or above level versus students that are struggling readers and struggling comprehenders? Also, as we talked about in your learning outcomes, using picture books for reading comprehension. So what are 3 ways that picture books can really enrich comprehension instruction? So I know we think of picture books as something that teachers might read in kindergarten or 1st grade, but really and truly, if we need to peel away the layers and look at how to know what we're reading in a text, using a picture book is a solid strategy to use because you're taking the difficult element out. So sometimes if I'm a struggling comprehender, I might be a struggling reader. Excuse me. And so if I'm a struggling reader and now I'm reading this book that I'm struggling with the words and the language and the vocabulary, there's no way I'm going to comprehend. But if you are working with me and differentiating instruction to allow me to kind of take that difficult aspect out, and now I can read it easy, and I just need to remember the pieces of it and what's happening in the story. So picture books are a solid strategy to use if you have a student who is really struggling with how to comprehend, what do I need to remember, remembering a simple order of events even. The picture books are the way to go. So choosing good fit books is another piece that chapters 4 and 5 speak to. And really that kind of is a good connection to the picture book piece. So if we are in upper elementary grades, intermediate grades, we don't want to have all picture books in our book boxes or using picture books in our reading groups. We want to make sure that we're finding good fit books. So there's a little bit of information in your text about good fit books, but I also want you to do a little bit of legwork, a little bit of research, and see what good fit books are. There's a lot of resources out there about it, a lot of cute little ideas on how to work with your students on how to pick good fit books. So make sure that this is where your anchor chart video comes in. Before you create your anchor chart for good fit books, I want you to watch that video in your week 2 content folder, and then you're going to design an anchor chart. So you can do one of 2 ways. You can create it on a piece of paper or on a chart paper, take a picture and scan it in. You're going to put it in your answer here box. Or you can do it digitally and you can just insert like a table right here, and you can insert all of your images and your content and tell me digitally, show me your anchor chart for good fit books. The other pieces that we're talking about this week are gradual release of responsibility. So what this really means is I'm going to scaffold my instruction so that I'm not just going from me teaching and the instruction to dumping it all on the student and you figure it out. So guided or gradual release of responsibility goes in a I do, we do, you do format. And it really is simply that. The teacher starts with their instruction as a model. Then we do it together and we're kind of coaching the students through the process so that they understand. And then you do is that they're able to then do it independently. Maybe some support from the teacher, but for the most part, independently. So tell me, define in your own words, what is gradual release of responsibility and why is that a best practice, in particular with reading comprehension? The final piece that we're talking about this week is assessing comprehension. So making sure that we have authentic assessment that's happening so that we know if students are able to comprehend the critical information in the text that they're reading. So explain the 3 areas and how assessing within those 3 areas will impact your planning and instruction, in particular with reading comprehension. So you're going to pull out those 3 ideas and speak to those a little bit and how they impact what you're planning, what you're teaching your students in your classroom for reading comprehension. So that is our work this week. It's 2 chapters to read, but it's a crammed full 2 chapters for sure. So a reminder, and I'll include this in your email announcement and your announcement in Blackboard. You're reading chapter 4 and 5. Let me back up. You're finishing anything from week 1 because I'm giving everyone a pass and no late points taken off for week 1 since we're getting acclimated to the process. Finish anything for week 1. Most of you are finished. Then you need to do your reading for strategies that work, chapters 4 and 5. Your discussion board and your interactive notebook prompts that are here for week 2. Right? So thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for those of you that are staying on top of your work. I know that life happens and sometimes we need a little flexibility, but let's not let things get too far behind that we're really too far behind to catch up. So if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out. And I look forward to seeing all of your anchor charts for good fit books in your interactive notebook. Have a great week.